I'm Pavni, and today I have Harry with me, who's a student from Liverpool Hope University and is currently doing Masters in Politics and International Relations. So, conversation we'll be having today is on nationalism and pluralism, and discovering the themes of diversity, secularism. So, let's get to know him better. Harry, why are you interested in international relations and politics?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here, and it's a pleasure to meet you, Pavni. Well, what got me interested in doing a master's degree in politics and international relations is, politics. It underpins every single decision that affects society, and that can range from the most well-off to the most not so well-off in society. And so it affects everyone, and how society interacts with each other, and international relations, of course, how states interact, how trade operates, conflicts all the way across the world can impact domestic politics and many different countries. So it's just the fascination with different countries, different people, all of the world really, that spurred that interest, and the hope that one day what I learn or ideas that I may have could make a difference in a sense, and hopefully make the world a more acceptable, like in terms of accepting other people, and tolerant place where everyone can live in peace and love one another, instead of the thought of like conflicts that we have throughout the world, because often we have a negative view of what human nature is. Some people would say human nature and relate it to the idea of conflict and how people won't get along or can't get along, or have focus on the differences. But instead of that, human nature is also cooperation. It's also being a community, building massive buildings, nations. Just the fact that we're here right now is a prime example of why human nature is not as negative as we can often think. And a problem that we have as humans is negativity bias, whereas I want to promote that positivity. I want to promote the fact that we are in a world that talks to each other. We're all affected by one another. We have far more in common than what we have that's different. We're all people. We all made out of blood, bones, flesh, and we all have different beliefs and thoughts, but the fact that we have those thoughts and beliefs is what truly brings us together.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think this idea resonates with me a lot, because I read Robert Dahl, and he wrote a book on democracy, and he said that how the ideas of democracy and nation building were not just erupted in one place at one time, and across the world, and across centuries and different timelines. So you can't just study one nation, one place, and isolate it like an echo chamber, right?
Definitely.
You need to discover everything, and that's how then you build a global village sort of a thing. So yeah, that's really interesting. But I'm really interested to know what brought you to India all the way from UK, and more about your dissertation probably.
Yes, so what brought me to India is that, studying politics and international relations is only so much if you don't actually experience international relations by going to another nation. And international relations happens on so many levels. It happens on the governmental level, it happens on the interpersonal level, the societal level. And what I am seeing and experiencing in India and learning in terms of the depth of the different ways similar political issues affect Indians as they do affects like British people, seeing parallels, differences, it really makes me be able to appreciate this global community, this global society, and then encourage others to maybe think about doing the same, or say be more accepting of one another, and hopefully just spreading positivity as well. But also I've always just found the idea of travelling and seeing how vibrant new places just as a really beautiful, good thing to do. And I've definitely seen the vibrant, complicated and nature of India, and it's been amazing to see. I don't know if that answers your question fully. My dissertation, of course. So based on that, what I primarily study in my politics and international relations is the theory and concept of pluralism. So how do we deal with and understand pluralism? Because often when people talk about pluralism and the fact that there's diversity, people see it as a problem to be solved. In fact, in a textbook I read by a man called Andrew Shorten, the chapter's titled "The Problem of Pluralism," essentially, as though it's, or something along those lines. It's referenced as a problem many times throughout the different theories, whether it be political liberalism of Rawls, or a modus vivendi approach of John Gray. But what I subscribe to very much so is the idea of agonism. So agonism sounds very familiar to antagonism. Antagonism is seeing difference as a negative, bad thing that is meant to be focused on, that draws us apart, whereas agonism, on the other hand, sees those differences, acknowledges those differences, while also seeing the similarities. Similarities and difference cannot exist in a vacuum. Obviously there needs to be similarity to have difference. Neither can exist without the other. But agonism looks at those differences and thinks, well, yeah, we're different, but it is those differences that make my identity that differs from your own. It gives it meaning, it makes it more distinct,
so
it adds meaning to it.
Carves out like a different identity for individuals.
Yeah, it reinforces the idea that yes, those differences are there, but they're beautiful things that actually make our identities like unique and something to be celebrated. And how does this apply to say a political system? Well, we would have a space that is underpinned by mutual respect and understanding, which a democracy, generally speaking, is something that tries to accomplish this. And then more parties, many diverse people will come together at that space, and they will discuss where they differ, they will see where they differ, but any difference is fine, but they'll come to a compromise, they'll learn from one another, they will understand one another, and they will come to compromises, and they will actually not see these differences as antagonistic, they will see as agonistic. And these ideas come from Chantal Mouffe and William Connolly, and it's just an idea that I'm only hoping I'm doing justice right now, but it's something that I think deproblematizes pluralism. It makes it a positive thing, something that actually helps build the world into a positive image where everyone, whatever gender, ethnicity, religion, or orientation, however they see themselves, it builds an identity that can help one another, that we all can be respectful.
So, like in 21st century, how do you feel that agonism plays a role? Like, you know, in a time where society is getting more hostile, or like, you know, hostile day by day, and where systems are largely turning into like nationalism, to hyper-nationalism, then to fascism, right? So how do you see agonism playing a role in it? Because we're seeing these these genocidal trends that are happening, and then like casting away entire population based on their ethnicity. So then how do you see the agonism, which is very well defined by you, but then how do you see it playing a role?
So how it plays a role, I'm gonna hone in on your
like you clearly define agonism, right, and pluralism. So my question is that in 21st century, how do you see agonism and pluralism playing a role in it, specifically where we now see a lot of genocidal tendencies and trends building up, right, which is creating a very hostile space and environment for people who belong to certain ethnicities, communities, or religion, race, etc., etc. So now, very well put definition by you. How do you see agonism playing a role here in 21st century?
So,
and also just to add, like in states where now we see also nationalism emerging, taking place of hyper-nationalism and then of fascism. So yeah.
Yes. So how we apply the idea of agonism to the scenarios you just mentioned to do with nationalism. Well, first of all, it's the fact that nationalism is a self-defeating concept in itself. Nationalism actually only creates further nationalism because within any given nation there is other people groups who consider themselves to be a nation in their own right. Within that group there is a culture or community that consider themselves to be another nation. So where does nationalism actually end? It doesn't get us anywhere, because even within a overarching nationalism, so at the state level, that will result in splits between different interpretations of how they want to be nationalists. Political splits are very common in fascist systems, or it's a highly fascist tendency, especially once figureheads are removed, the dictator is removed, then there's splits, and that's all that nationalism promotes. In fact, the idea of nationalism being a self-defeated concept is something that I read in a book by Andrew Vincent, and it really resonated with me because it's true. Everybody has different views of what a nation is, what their nation is, even if they may be very similar. But the thing is with that is that those similarities do in time become differences once you eliminate all other differences. Who's next? In Europe, for example, a common example, what we say is what happened in Nazi Germany. First, they came for the Jewish population, and then they came for the Catholic population, homosexuals, and then finally, the person saying that, then they came for me. And who was there to stand up for them? Nobody was there, because everyone else had been dealt with. Everyone else had been completely devoured by this nationalism, and that is why it's so dangerous. It just leads to further fragmentation after fragmentation. Whereas if you apply ideas of agonism and truly understand that we are all different. But
isn't it ironic, like you said, that so nationalism further leads to fragmentation, but then the leaders who evoke a nationalistic belief in people, they want a more united. So it's like very ironic in that sense. It is
ironic. It's a paradox in a sense. And no version of nationalism that existed 100 years ago exists in the same way as it does today.
So what you're saying is that it's not bound by temporal limits, right? Nationalism, does it keep evolving?
It keeps changing and evolving, but with those changes and evolutions come a lot of violence, a lot of political purges, a lot of conflict, a lot of many lives getting hurt in the process. And usually those lives that are getting hurt in the process are the most vulnerable within society, and that is why it is within everyone's best interest, no matter their religion, their ethnicity, their sexual orientation, or various other political beliefs. It's within everyone's best interest to be against any form of nationalism, even if it's nationalism that may seem at first like it's within their best interest. For example, a Spanish man might see immigration as a threat, and then see the Vox Party, which are a nationalist group in Spain, and they'll see, oh look, they're sticking up for us Spanish people, but what Spanish people are they really sticking up for? Generally it's the most privileged in society that will be affected last, but in the meanwhile, while they need to get that support, they'll say that they're here for all Spanish people.
But it's a class division thing that they're playing into.
A class division thing, but it's mainly an anti anyone that isn't Spanish thing. So it is nationalism. But yeah, and that just leads to conflicts and many people getting hurt. And yeah.
So you also see, now if we delve into like specific regions like Britain and India, you see these nationalistic tendencies rising up, right? In recent times. So in Britain, why do you feel that it's occurring now?
Well, in the UK at the moment there is. Now, it doesn't reflect the majority of people in the UK, but there are people that have been left behind by previous governments who are being influenced by far-right and populist messaging from people like the Reform Party and Nigel Farage, that then will see what they have to offer, a Britain for British people and things like that. And they'll be drawn to that without realizing that there are going to be people that don't agree with that, and that's just going to create conflict. It's going to create division. It's actually going to make Britain and the UK and then the world, because the thing is, one thing happens in one country throughout Europe, one happens in one place in Europe, the growth of populist movements. It also happens in Germany, in Spain, in Italy. It spreads, but all that does lead to is conflict and fragmentation. And the analogy I referred to earlier with the, well, who's there to stand up for me next after. So it is within all our interests, collective interests, to stand against the growing sense of nationalism across the world, because how are we meant to live in a world where we're all accepted, where we're all 100% safe, unless we realise that we have differences, but there's a lot more in common, and just have respect for each other through those agonistic principles that I discussed previously.
There's also this article by Rajiv Bhargava who talks about these trends of secularism in Europe and India, and then it's basically after post-imperialist Britain, if you see, there was a lot of religious homogeneity, and so the need for secularism was based on that. And then having nationalistic tendencies, would you say, was easier than it is now? Because now if you see from 20th, 21st century, there was a lot of people of different ethnicities, communities, culture began settling there, migrating there, and so then it was difficult to maybe have a sort of to build that nationalistic urgency in people.
So, can you repeat that last bit of the question, please?
So, post-imperialist Britain, we see that there was a lot of religious homogeneity.
Yeah.
Because just just like a very fresh post-colonial Britain. And so, like if I relate it to India, India is a highly diverse country in terms of religion, ethnicity, caste, class. And so here having secularism is much more difficult than it was in UK previously.
Definitely.
Yeah, but now in 20th and 21st century, we see that England and Europe in whole is getting a lot, not religiously homogenized, because we see a lot of different groups coming there, settling there. Like we also have Muslims, we also have Indians, we also have, like you mentioned, a lot of Bangladeshi, Nepali restaurants coming. So there are communities living from different countries.
Yes. So
I think we can conclude after this. Okay. It's already more than 10 minutes.
Okay.
The second part.
So we just conclude that.
Yes.
we're continuing or concluding?
Conclude.
Okay.
After this, you answer the question.
Yeah. So why secularism can be difficult in certain contexts is because secularism argumentally is a form of fundamentalism in itself, and the idea that secularism can't be extreme is incorrect. For example, historically you had the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany completely getting rid of any sense of religion, completely replacing it, but in the process that actually marginalised and discriminated against many people who held religious beliefs. Therefore, we can't ignore religion either. Religion is an important thing to many different people, many people's lives. It needs to be a part of that agonistic framework, in the same way political beliefs are. Religion is important. It's a very personal thing to a lot of people. It's a thing that can help on a community level as well, and it can be a very positive thing. For example, the sentence "love thy neighbour," that comes from Christianity. I'm not a Christian myself, but I think that is a beautiful belief to think. I think we all should love one another, our neighbours as a international community.
Because ultimately, it's like no religion tells you to hate a community.
Exactly.
It's like people politicize religion, and then it becomes a tool for violence.
It does the same way ideology does, and ethnicity, and you name it. People can make it a difference that is weaponized, and that doesn't result in it doesn't end in a positive result for anyone. It's a net negative that happens, and we need to all work together for a future where we don't allow nationalism to succeed, where we're all accepting of our differences while realising the amount of similarity we have. Difference is important, but so is similarities. All of it is something that is beautiful. It makes us human.
Yeah, it does. This was an excellent conversation, Harry. I'm glad we had your inputs, and I think our audience would be glad to hear that how nationalism in itself, where we see it's rising, and to hear these points of views, I think it's really important for them to know about this. So thank you so much.
No worries, it was a pleasure speaking.